What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Girl Dating Podcast with Kanaya, my baby sister Kiani, and our father Marcel. And this week we have a very special guest, and Kiani's going to tell you about who it is.
I certainly am. Okay, so the special guest we have today is someone I could literally talk about for ages. That's my literal twin. Like, I love this woman. A nurse.
She's not your literal twin.
That doesn't matter. Me and
You're killing a vibe.
Go ahead. Me and Gary, not like this. Like, she's a teacher. She's a nurse. She's a God-fearing woman. She is one of the key members to the Kerr Village that, we have around our family. And today we have Mrs. Yvonne Kerr, okay? Or as we call her, Kimmy. So let's
Yeah, so we have my mom on today. And so obviously this Girl Dating podcast would not be possible if I didn't have a mom. And so I'm tickled to have this time with my mom in this conversation, this context with my girls. Who knows where this is going to lead over the next however minutes we have together for this episode. But Mom, thank you for joining us. We're glad to have you. Let's start with you giving us your first thoughts when I told you about the podcast and you coming on as our guest.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to give some insight into my relationship with my son as well as with my granddaughters. I was somewhat surprised. Podcasting is not something I do, so it sort of put me for a loop as to how is that going to work out. But I am, again, grateful for the opportunity just to share with you there that are listening to this podcast, the opportunity of what it was like raising children, and what's the difference is in raising grandchildren.
Okay. So we came up with the idea, obviously, because I don't have sons and the Lord above gave me girls and my girls are phenomenal. But my context of what phenomenal women are obviously comes from you and grandma and the other women in our family. So with you having, grown up obviously under grandma's authority, talk about your experience and your childhood relationship with your dad.
Oh, my time with my dad was just phenomenal. My dad wasn't around, in the household most of my life. He left when we were about 10, 12 years old, but he was always in my life until he passed away. He passed away at age 69. And throughout that whole time, my dad was there whenever I needed him. During the time we were in the household together, he was a working father. Give us anything we wanted as long as it wasn't something harmful. And he was a great provider. He worked for the post office till his retirement days. And then he was a very much family oriented, especially with his extended family. I knew all my cousins and whatnot on his side of the family. I visited with them on a regular basis. We hung out together. We did family reunions almost every year. My dad was a guy he was just a people person. He had a lot of friends. We had a lot of other uncles, whether it was by blood or just because of the friendships he had. His friendships were very long term. And we all knew each other, we all cared for each other, and we all loved each other. My dad was a person, he just enjoyed life. Fishing was his, I'd say his major hobby. And through him, I learned how to fish as well. And I spent time in the country with him, and I spent time at his cabin in the country. And we would spend almost, a couple months or a couple weeks in the summer months just hanging out with him and the extended family because of a club he had. And, we'd do fish fries and just, enjoy each other's company. So my dad had a big part in my life as far as what I wanted in a man in my life, someone who could provide, someone who enjoyed family time, and someone who, just enjoyed life.
So when you had your first son, me, what comparisons or expectations, if any, did you have for my impending fatherhood, whenever it would happen, in relation to what you experienced from your father? What kind of father did you want to raise in me?
I wanted you to have values that were moral as well. I wanted you to enjoy life. I wanted you to raise children that were independent and yet dependent, in the sense that they could make choices of their own.
Check.
But they made them according to not just a whim, but they had some substance to make them from. I wanted you to have children that were, they not only loved you, but they respected you. And I think that's the difference between love and respect. You can respect somebody, but you may not like them. And I was hoping that you would have that in your girls. They would love you as a parent, but they would respect you both as a person and as a human. I wanted you to have children that realize that you could give them only so much, but some things they had to go out and seek on their own. That whatever decisions they made in their life, it would affect them throughout their life. They'd be able to make decisions that were not just about right here, right now, but that they could see the long term of them. And I think that the children have done that for the most part. And we see where they're at in their life right now. We see some of the accomplishments they made in their life right now. So I think they're on that path. And if they can stay on that path, I think they're going to be in great shape.
Okay, so, well, people don't know this. I am the OG grandchild on the paternal side of the family. I have cousins older than me, but by marriage, so they came in later. We love them just the same. But when I came, what was it like being a grandma and that your son had the first grandchild?
I was ecstatic. You know, by the time my kids were all grown, my big thing was, when will I be a grandmother? But I know that's not my choice to make. That's up to the children to make. And when I finally found out, I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. The thing with being a parent versus being a grandparent, I'm the grandmother. I can spoil you and I can send you home. When you're the parent, you sort of got to keep the child. So I was so looking forward to that, because I could think of all the things I want to do with the grandchildren. And some of those things I had done with the kids as well, with my children. But there were some things that's like, okay, I can take them out. We can do this, that, and the other. And then when it's time to say, oh, she got to go home, I could send them on their way. If I had other things I wanted to do and didn't want to keep the grandchildren, then hey, I don't have to. When you're a parent, that's your first responsibility. So as a grandparent, you become sort of second in line. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being a grandparent because, for one thing, it kept me young. Keeping up with children at a later age in life, that's not an easy task to do. But by being able to keep up with them, it kept me going. It kept me motivated. And raising the grandchildren was different from raising the children, and because of the times, because of the societal expectations. And so I had to make some adjustments too. But I think in the long run, I think it worked out well, at least on my behalf anyway.
Okay, so talk to us about Kiani coming along.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Like, we asked Poppy the same question when we talked about him becoming a dad, but like, what was it like the second time around being a grandparent? Because you already had Kanaya, and then I came along, so.
Well, I mean, for me, it was just more joy. I mean, there's only 4 years between the two of you. And so it was just more of an extension of what I had to offer in my mind. I was a working grandmother, but I still tried to make time for you as well as for Kanaya. And I tried to give you the same thing I gave Kanaya. I didn't shortchange you, hopefully, in any way. You know, when Kanaya was a baby, I tried to make it my business that every weekend she was with me. Why? Because I knew the parents needed some time for themselves. They were working too. I know what it's like raising children. So I knew the time and the effort in taking care of them. It took a time away from them as a couple. So I had no problem with taking them on the weekend. My weekends were fine. I knew where I would be. I knew what I would be doing. when Kiani came along, it was pretty much the same thing. Yeah, it's two of you now, but you know what? Kanaya's a big sister now. Kanaya can help out. Kanaya can learn what it's like to take care of somebody, not because you have to, but because you want to. So when Kiani came on, that was just, hey, double cream on the cake.
When you think about how you and I and my older sister grew up together, I remember years ago you would talk about, with you being a teenage mom with two kids. So the three of us did a lot of growing up together.
Yes, definitely.
And so you and Pops, you all split. I was very young. So me living in a household without my dad in the household has an effect. How did you believe I would parent based on the example of parenthood I had?
I knew it would have some effect on you, but even though your dad wasn't constantly in the home, he was still around, he was still there in your life. You had other male figures in your life. My brothers were there, in the household that we were stayed in. So at least you had other male figures around you. Uh, then, my dad was there. So you did have some time with him. Yes, it was a concern that, you may not have a father constantly there. But I think there are certain things you can learn even from women that you may not have gotten from your dad. And I think you got some of those things. In the household with so many women, you being that, one male for the most part in that generation,
That's why he wanted sons, guys.
What was that?
That's why I wanted sons.
And I sort of figured that, but God chose otherwise. But again, even though that male was not, your father wasn't constantly there in the household, he was still there. If you needed him, you knew you could call him. You could reach out to him. It's not like he was absent completely.
Right.
You had your uncle there, your Uncle Ty. He was there. So if you had moments you needed to talk to someone, he was there to reach out to. And then, as you got a little older, you had your pastor, Reverend Love. You could reach out to him. And then you started forming relationships with other people at the church, for one. And, so it's not like you just didn't have any male figures. You had other people to fall back on if their need was there. You had your teachers. Mr. Jones was there for you. So it's not like you were without male guidance, but you had so many women around you. You got more so probably from them. Maybe a 60-40 split. I'm not sure how much to say, but it wasn't like you were abandoned by the male.
That's true. I mean, my dad has been constant in my life. He has not been an absentee father. He just simply did not live with me. So I don't want any of the listeners to get the idea that we are estranged in any way. One other question regarding that. One of the things that I did want to do, and we talked about this in a different episode, was I wanted to be in the house with my children. I wanted my girls to have the advantage, if you will, of having their father in the household with them every night. Someone whom they can, even if we don't talk in great detail, I wanted them to see my face every night they lay their head down in the bed. So I believe, I know, my sisters not growing up with our father in the household with them, both of my sisters have turned out to be extraordinary women. But I know things would be different. I'm not saying they would be better. I'm not saying they would be worse, but I know they would be different if our father lived in the house with us. So that was one of the things I wanted to be sure I gave my girls, my presence. And their mother has been gracious to keep me around while they've been growing up. So I'm grateful for her. But talk about how you believe things would be different for my girls if I was not in the household with them 24/7.
That's a good question.
I think the biggest thing would be if they didn't have you there, what do they look for in a man? What do they look for in that partner they may be seeking further on in life? What do they find? Where do they find the virtues for that good man that they may be, looking for in future? What is that example? Who sets that example for them? Well, first of all, their dad, their grandfather, or whoever else who's there to pick up that spot when the father's not in the home. And I think that's a big thing because I did spend a lot of time with my dad. I had an idea what a good man was like. I understood certain things that a man should do and other things that a man shouldn't do. And if I saw those things, those are some of the things I would shy away from if I saw it in other males. So I think what having a father around us for a daughter gives her some of the guidelines or the virtue, the template, or what she wants in a man. There aren't a lot out there to choose from. I'm sorry to say, our Black men are dying quickly, and interracially, people somewhat frown at it, but there's nothing wrong with having an interracial relationship. But again, if you don't know what a good man looks like, how do you choose one? So I think that's what the main benefit is of having the father in the home. Because if you find that good father, then that's basically what you sort of aim to get, to keep going in your life. It's like if you've always had this type of a lifestyle with that father in the house, that's sort of the lifestyle you want to duplicate for yourself. But you got to find that guy who's going to duplicate that for you. It's like if you're in an abusive household and you're watching a man who beats on a woman, that's the man you shy away from. And so when you get old enough to make those choices, when you see that, you sort of shy away from it. So I think that's a major thing in having that male figure in your life, because it sort of sets the standard of what you look for in future in your life.
Well, another question that we want to ask you is, well, what parts of Poppy's personality have you seen emerge or come back to the surface from having daughters? Like things that like he may have done when he was younger, but as he got older, shied away from. But now that having kids brings out a new side of you, like what's that other side, if there is one?
A couple things. I think he's less risky. I always tell, I always tell the tale about him getting on the L train at midnight with a young lady who was hanging out, and him just hopping on the Chicago L in midnight, and how upset I was about that. But
and jumping off garages, like you was just, man.
Well, yeah, and I mean, in my mind, that's a risk he should have never taken. But I also understand in his mindset that this is a young lady, and his idea of I can't let her out there by herself at night. And it was sort of his way of being protective, if that's the word I can use. So I understand that. It doesn't mean I like it, but I understand it. And so that's what I'm saying, his risk taking, because he knows he's got girls. He knows he needs to be there for them. He's not going to go, mountain climbing or jumping off bridges and stuff like that, because he knows he's got other people depending on him, and he needs to be there for them. So that's one thing I realized. The other thing is patience. When you're raising girls, females are hormonal, and they tend to change from moment to moment, and they tend to last minute, especially as a teenager, last minute have desires. So it was not uncommon for Yanni or Naya before you started driving to say, Poppy, I want to do this, like 10 minutes before it happens. And for him to have to make a decision, do I allow it, or do I say, no, you got to give me more time on it. And in many instances, I've known him to say, okay, we'll do it. So he's learned patience in how females tend to switch on and off and be last minute for stuff. And that may be because he's been around women for so long. It's like, it's just par for the course. So those are two of the main things. But I think what I also have seen, a lot of things he has already owned, I see more of it. He is very flexible. If the girls say, Poppy, I want to do this, and it's like, he may be on the verge of saying no, but then he'll say, okay, we'll try it. As long as he knows that it's not something that's going to be harmful, and if it provides a moment for them to learn something in it, he's willing to take the chance and be more flexible instead of an outright no. So I've seen that happen too.
So, Gammy, what do you think, or how do you think Poppy's parenting has changed as we've gotten older? Now I'm in my 20s, Kiani's 16. She'll be one more year in the house, and I'm on my way out of undergrad from when we were little girls.
I think in the beginning, your father was more of the protector. I think that was his big thing in the beginning, more protector, because first of all, you're little, you're young. Making decisions is not something you do well at a younger age. And so he figured he had to be the decision maker for you.
We, Ern and I.
Let me go back.
Yeah.
That he as a parent with the wife had to be the decision maker for you, and trying to weigh the decision versus giving you some independence to make or have input into the decisions. But you're young, so at that point, not a lot of it. But now you, for one, let's start with you, have had time in life. You've gone through some things, you've experienced some things. You're away from school now. And I've always said every kid should go away to school. Why? Because it gives you opportunity to make some decisions without your parent there on the spur, on the moment. You got to make a decision now. You can't call mom or dad to say, what I do about this. You got to make a decision right then and there. And that forces you to sort of grow up in some respects. Maybe a little sooner than what you wanted to, but at least it pushes you there. And so now your decision-making process starts to amp up. It also provides you the opportunity to gain some freedoms and have to do some things that you normally wouldn't do. You're at home, mom and dad has been doing your laundry, you're cooking and everything else. You're away at school now. You've got nobody else to depend on but yourself. Well, what do? You're going to clean those clothes, or you're going to walk around in, not the best state with dirty clothes. And that's not something you want to do, because now it's part of your social life. And so it forces you to sort of grow up a little quicker, because now I'm taking on tasks that I never had to do at home. But now I got to do it because now I'm not at home. So that's what it does. And now your dad and your mom's decision-making sort of lessens, because now it's more so on you. You're at school. They're not going to force you to go to class. The teachers don't care if you show up, but it's you there that's there for an education. So you need to make the decision. Do I get this education, or do I just make it my playground during the 4 years I'm here? Because you know what? In the end, it's your future that you're playing with. So his decision-making process is lessened. He becomes more of an advisor since you've gotten older. You figure out what you think you want to do, and then you call him. Well, Papa, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think about it? And like I always say, when it comes to advice, you take some of it, all of it, or none of it. But at least he's there to give you some background, to sort of play that devil's advocate, show points that you may not have even thought about when you decided on a certain path to take. Well, what about this? What's the alternative? What if you don't? So that's his role more so now as you've gotten older. Pretty much the same thing with Kiani. Her being a teenager, there are certain things that teenagers go through, and he's already been through it with you already. So it sort of gives him an idea of what's coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, but it's a whole different ball game with this second one, though.
Let me say this though. But when you look at it, you have to think about the uniqueness of the children. Mm-hmm. When I was raising my two girls, they're 10 years apart. What I did with the older one never worked with the younger one.
Say that again.
My girls were 10 years apart. What I did with the older one didn't work with the second one. Mm-hmm. And it may be the same thing with you and Yanni. Yanni's personality is different from you, Kanaya. Yanni's more of an outgoing type person. Yanni's sort of the social butterfly type. So she's going to want to do things that you may not have done coming up. Yanni may be at a party every weekend or want to be at a party every weekend. Yanni may want to do some things that you never even thought about doing. So now your dad is trying to balance what's good for her versus understanding she is a social butterfly. And so you have to do some things a little bit different with her. Yanni may go to 10 parties for every one that you went to.
But 10, that's it? Just 10?
Well, I'm just saying, but the bottom line is he needs to sort of balance out, are all these times that she's out good for her, or are there other things she should be spending time on, like maybe more books, or maybe focusing more on her spiritual being, stuff like that. So that's the difference when you're raising that second one versus the first one. You gotta look at their personalities because they're very unique, and especially when they're totally different. You gotta look at the times that you're raising them in too. Raising a 20-year-old versus raising a 16-year-old in today's society, totally different. Because Kanaya, as a 20-year-old, you got a stronger background for self. Yanni's going through that period where she's still trying to identify herself, and someone's got to sort of point her in the right direction. That's more your dad's role now with her versus them with you.
We hope everybody enjoyed this episode. Tune in every week to catch a new episode with two girls and their dad. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.